Hello, I'm Oliver Colling, and this is the My 70s TV Childhood Quiz. Welcome back to the 29th edition of our 70s TV trivia-based quiz, and spin-off from the My 70s TV Childhood podcast, which looks at what it was like to grow up in 1970s Britain and the role that TV played in our lives. First off, a huge thank you to all who've been in touch with questions for our special Christmas quiz, where all of our questions will be sourced from you, our wonderful listeners. We've had lots of variety so far, but still room for many more. If you can think of 5 questions, then send them, together with the answers, to quiz@my70stvchildhood.com, and we will be in touch. Now, I haven't got round to getting back to everyone who's sent in questions so far, but I will, don't worry. And many thanks again for submitting your questions. Our quiz itself is very straightforward in its design. We have 4 rounds of 5 questions, and for each correct answer you score a point. It is just for fun, but we do enjoy the fact that many of you are quite competitive about the quiz. The last few rounds, from what you've been telling us, have been quite challenging, so hopefully today can offer you the chance to improve. So without further ado, let's go on to round 1. And this is a round called Octoberfest, and as this episode is scheduled for release in October, all of the questions are about people who were born in October. Okay, let's go. Question 1. The great Brian Blessed, or Brian Blessed, as perhaps I should say, was born on the 9th of October 1936, and he appeared in countless TV shows during the 1970s. One of my favourites was Arthur of the Britons, which began in 1972. Which part did Brian play in Arthur of the Britons? Question 2. Bob Hoskins was born on the 26th of October 1942, and one of his early successful roles on TV was playing Alf, a removal man who had problems reading, in an adult educational show which was first shown in 1975. What was the name of the show? So what was it called? Question 3. Born on the 14th of October 1927, Roger Moore had lots of fun with Tony Curtis on The Persuaders. What was his character called? Question 4. Sir Michael Gambon appeared in lots of very serious TV drama during the 1970s, but he also appeared, rather surprisingly, in a BBC sitcom with Richard Bryars about 2 rather boring men who meet on a package holiday. It ran for 2 series between 1977 and 1979. But what was the name of the show? And finally, question 5. Jimmy Savile was born on the 31st of October 1926 and was seemingly a constant presence on our screens during the 1970s. But in what year did his Saturday show Jim Will Fix It first hit our screens? So what year was Jim Will Fix It first shown? I hope that was a reasonable start for you. And now let's move on to round 2. And this is our marathon or Fil Rouge Round, which features in every episode of the quiz and asks you questions about things we've covered in the 5 seasons of our podcast to date. If you haven't managed to listen to every episode, you can probably still make a good guess at most of these questions, so try not to worry. Question 1. In July 2021, we look back at Rentaghost. What was the name of the recently deceased man who was coming to terms with being, well, I suppose firstly being dead, but then being a ghost in the first series? Question 2. Still in 2021, we celebrated Mr. Benn's 50th birthday. What was the first adventure he went on called? And here's a clue, it's the name of the character whose costume he wore in that first adventure. Question 3. In our recent episode about Rainbow, I mentioned the various combinations of singers that eventually became Rod, Jane and Freddie. At one point, it was Rod, Jane and Roger. But what soap opera did Roger later go on to be a star in? So which soap opera did Roger from Rod, Jane and Roger go on to be a star in? And question 4. Way back in November 2020, we discussed Follyfoot. What was the name of the character played by Arthur English in that show? And question 5. Finally, in July this year, we look back at Crackerjack. Who was the first host that I remember seeing on that show? So who do I first remember hosting Crackerjack? How are we doing? Halfway through already. So let's move on to our next round. And this is our Spin the Wheel and Name That Tune mashup round. For those who haven't heard before, this is how it works. I shall use our specially constructed Wheel of Fate to choose a year in the 1970s, and then I will plug that year into our state-of-the-art AI-powered random theme tune generator, which will then choose 5 theme tunes this week to shows which ended on UK TV that year. And that's all there is to it. So let's spin the wheel. And it's landed on 1978. Okay, so let me just plug that into our AI-powered random theme tune generator and wait a couple of moments, and voila. Here's theme tune 1. Slightly tricky, that one. How about theme tune 2? Hopefully a little easier. And then theme tune 3. And theme tune 4, which hopefully you'll all get. And finally, how about this one at theme tune 5? So how's that? Bit of a mix, I think. And just like that, we're on to our final round already. And this is our TV Times round, where anything is fair game. Ready? Well, let's play. Question 1. Who played Dick Turpin in the ITV show of the same name that began in 1979? Question 2. What month and what year was the final episode of Dad's Army first screened on the BBC? Question 3. What was the name of the BBC's light-hearted quiz show presented by Joseph Cooper, based on classical music which ran from 1967 and right the way through the 70s? Question 4. In Chigley, who was the butler at Winkstead Hall? And here's a clue, he was also fireman on the steam train. And question 5. Robin Nedwell was a constant feature of the various hospital-based comedies in the Doctor series. But what was his character called? So what character did Robin Nedwell play in the Doctor series? And that's it, another quiz complete. But before we go on to our answers, here's the answer to last time's bonus question. As I said, we rented our TV from Radio Rentals for many years, as many people did. What was the brand name of the television sets provided by that company? And the answer is Baird, as in John Logie Baird. So well done if you got that one. This week's question is about a sitcom. In 1975, ITV released a sitcom based in Liverpool about a sailor who'd returned home after 2 years at sea. It featured sitcom stalwart Ken Jones, better known as Ives in Porridge, alongside the likes of Alison Steadman and a young Keith Chegwin. However, it was so badly received by audiences that the final episode was never shown. What was the show called? If you know the answer, then let me know by dropping a line to quiz@my70stvchildhood.com. All right then, time's up. Let's go on to this week's answers. Okay, our first round, Octoberfest. What part did Brian Blessed play in Arthur of the Britons? And that was Mark of Cornwall. Question 2. Bob Hoskins played a removal man, Alf, who had problems reading in an adult educational show first shown in 1975. What was it called? That was On the Move. And I bet some of you are singing the theme tune to that as I give you the answer. Question 3. Roger Moore had lots of fun with Tony Curtis on The Persuaders, but what was his character called? And I think probably quite a few of you got this one. That was Lord Brett Sinclair. Question 4. This is a tricky one, I think. So Michael Gambon appeared in a sitcom with Richard Bryars about two men who meet on a package holiday. What was the name of the show? It was called The Other One. And it seems to be one of those shows that's just been largely forgotten, and I think has probably been ignored by both of the stars. And question 5. Jimmy Savile, who was a constant presence on our screens during the 70s, but what year did Jim Will Fix It first hit our screens? And that was 1975. Okay, round 2. In Rentaghost, what was the name of the recently deceased man who was coming to terms with being a ghost in the first series? And that was Fred Mumford. Question 2. What was the name of Mr. Benn's first adventure? And it matched the name of the character whose costume he wore. And that was the Red Knight. Question 3. Going back to Rainbow, when we had Rod, Jane and Roger, which soap opera did Roger later go on to be a star in? And he was a star of the BBC's ill-fated El Dorado, playing a character called Bunny, I think was the name of the character. And question 4. In Follyfoot, Arthur English's character was called... It was called Slugger. And then, in the show Friday 5 to 5 beginning with C, so I don't get everybody shouting again, who was the first host I remember seeing on that show? That was Michael Aspel. All right, halfway through again. Back to our Spin the Wheel and Name That Tune round. All these finished in 1978. Theme tune 1. That was the prison drama Within These Walls. Theme tune 2. That was the current affairs show This Week. And I know some of you say it didn't finish in 1978 because it came back several years later. But no, I'm the quizmaster, so I make the rules. Question 3. But this was the theme tune to the show A Bunch of Fives, which was a fairly gritty school-based drama set around a school newspaper, if you remember that. Theme tune 4. Hopefully many of you got this one. That was the theme tune to the long-running police show Z Cars. And question 5. This was the theme tune to Happy Ever After, starring Terry Scott and June Whitfield, the precursor to Terry and June. All right, we're racing through these now, onto our final round, the TV Times round. Who played Dick Turpin in the ITV show of the same name? That was Richard O'Sullivan. And from what I remember, it's actually quite good. Question 2. What month and year was the final episode of Dad's Army first screened? That was November 1977. Question 3. What was the name of the BBC's light-hearted quiz show based on classical music? And that was Face the Music. And question 4. In Chigley, who was the butler at Winkstead Hall and also the fireman on the steam train? Mr. Brackett. And question 5. What was the name of Robin Nedwell's character in the Doctor series of sitcoms? And that was Dr. Duncan Waring. So, how did you do? Are you dancing in the streets or are you holding your head in shame? Whatever your score, I hope you've enjoyed playing our quiz. That's all for this quiz, other than to thank you for taking part and asking you a favour. If you enjoy the quiz, then tell your friends about it. We'd love to share our quiz with them too. We'd also like you to cross your fingers for us in the forthcoming UK Independent Podcast Awards, where we've been shortlisted for Best Film and TV Podcast for the second successive year. The award ceremony is in late October, and don't worry, we'll let you know how we get on. Don't forget, you can hear another episode of our regular podcast next week, and our next quiz in a fortnight. Until then, take care, be good to one another, and join us again soon for more from My 70s TV Childhood and the My 70s TV Childhood Quiz.